Both Democratic and Republican lawmakers are cautioning Joe Biden to pump the brakes on his recent announcement regarding troop withdrawals from Afghanistan. Now, this is something that Donald Trump claimed that he wanted to do. He failed in pulling all of the US troops out of the country, but Biden actually does want to withdraw all US troops from Afghanistan by September 11th, which would be the 20th anniversary of the largest terrorist attack in America. Now, whether or not we are willing to believe him right now, that's a different story. We can get to that. But I do want to give you the details on what he's proposing. The decision will keep more than 3,000 American troops on the ground in Afghanistan beyond the May 1st withdrawal deadline announced by former President Donald Trump. Administration officials said that since Biden was fixing a definite date on American troop withdrawal, he hoped to avoid an increase in violence, which the Taliban have threatened if the United States kept troops beyond May 1st. Now, we are going to keep troops there beyond May 1st. Biden is not going to abide by whatever promise Donald Trump made. But in a speech, Biden claimed that he will begin taking troops out of the country beginning on May 1st. And there is some disagreement, Nando, among Democrats on this issue, primarily Democrats like Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who said, I'm very disappointed in POTUS's decision to set a September deadline to walk away from Afghanistan. Although this decision was made in coordination with our allies, the United States has sacrificed too much to bring stability to Afghanistan to leave without verifiable assurances of a secure future. All the US has done is made a mess of Afghanistan. The Afghani people want the United States out. They consider US troops an occupying force in the country. And so Jeanne Shaheen, who's heavily funded by private military contractors, might have her thoughts on this, but her thoughts are not warranted. And Nando, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple interesting things. I mean, on a micro level, I find it interesting that the Biden administration is extending the May 1st deadline that President Trump had said. I mean, I don't think that Trump, is like an honest broker in any situation, but it is true that there was this May 1st deadline, which Biden is extending. And I gotta say, like every single day more that we're in Afghanistan is just perpetuating an ongoing crime that we've been perpetrating for 20 years. But that being said, I do find it a little bit surprising that Biden is committing to pulling out, because I suspected that he might do like a half pullout, essentially like, we're gonna continue our support for the Afghan military through advisors. We're gonna pull out all combat, whatever, like some sort of half pullout that wasn't a real pullout. But it does seem, at least for now, that all US troops will be pulled out by September 11th. I mean, who knows what kind of like CIA goons will be left behind, but at least nominally, the US is pulling out. I think it's worth reiterating that the Afghanistan war, which has been going on for 20 years, every single step of the way, the American policymakers in charge of that war have been lying to us about it. Both the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, every single administration which has perpetrated this war has lied to us. We know this because the Washington Post in October of 2019 published something called the Afghanistan Papers, which was the largest leak about the Afghanistan war. And it showed that the US was essentially lying about every single aspect about the war. And just a couple months ago, Anna, on weekends, I did a whole segment about a CIA-trained death squads in Afghanistan that were just murdering children. Like straight up, just murdering children in villages, like walking into schools and just killing children willy-nilly. This is the kind of crime that the US has fueled in Afghanistan for 20 years. So every single day that we are still in there is a crime in my book, and we should, the sooner we get out, the better. Do not listen to any of these people who say, but it's gonna bring the Taliban back. It probably will. It probably will, but the status quo is untenable. It is just fueling an endless conflict that will go on forever if we are there. The presence of the United States, on the one hand, keeps the Taliban somewhat at bay, even though like the Taliban, by any reasonable definition, has won on the battlefield against the United States military. But every single day that we stay there, we just fuel the conflict longer. And if we were to stay there indefinitely, like some American policymakers want to do, we will fuel an endless conflict. So we need to get out now.
I 100% agree with you. And look, the reason why I'm skeptical about Biden's announcement is because we had similar announcements by Donald Trump, and then he was essentially pressured successfully by the intelligence community and by top military generals to remain in Afghanistan. And so a lot can happen between now and September. So I don't want people to think that I'm being overly pessimistic, but I have reason to believe, based on past events, but also based on taking a more comprehensive look at Biden's foreign policy, that there could be some possibility that he doesn't actually follow through on this. I'm telling you what I think, okay? I'm hoping I'm wrong though. I'm hoping that he does follow through on this. And Nando, to your point about the death squads killing children in Afghanistan, I just wanna go back to Jean Shaheen's point, because look, the United States has sacrificed too much to bring stability to Afghanistan. I guess that's the stability she's talking about. She also says it undermines our commitment to the Afghan people, particularly Afghan women. I urge the Biden administration to make every effort between now and September to safeguard the process made and support the progress made and support our partners in the formation of an inclusive transitional government. Look, again, the Afghani people have already spoken on this, and that includes women. They don't want the US troops there, and I think that their point of view is much more important than the point of view of a US senator, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, who's being heavily funded by private defense contractors. By the way, if you look at her top 20 contributors, you have 3 of them who are literally defense contractors. Raytheon Technologies comes in at number 7, has taken quite a bit of money, $56,397 from Raytheon Technologies alone between 2015 and 2020. Coming in at number 17, Northrop Grumman, $41,451, and then General Electric, $37,790. So look, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the military budget, that remains unchanged. So for her to keep shilling for this failed war is particularly disgusting because her buddies, these defense contractors, are still getting what they want. And I also want to point that, look, whenever you hear people draw comparisons between Democrats and Republicans, understand that on very, substantive policy decisions and issues, they seem to mirror one another. So you just heard what a Democrat, Jean Shaheen, had to say about pulling troops out of Afghanistan. Let's take a look at what a Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham, had to say about Biden's decision.
To all of you who are listening, you remember where you're at on September 11th, 2001. Our military told President Biden that if you withdraw all of our forces, Al-Qaeda and ISIS will come roaring back. Afghanistan would disintegrate into civil war, and we can avoid all of that by having 3,000 to 5,000 American forces, making sure that ISIS and Al-Qaeda never come back to hurt us. He rejected that advice. Afghanistan is going to deteriorate pretty rapidly. Al-Qaeda and ISIS are going to come back. He's paving the way for another 9/11.
Nando, you hadn't even seen that video, and you already knew what the talking points were going to be. And they haven't even changed their message. It's exactly the same.
No, it's exactly the same. And here's a prediction that I'm going to make. I think between now and September 11th of this year, you're going to see stories in the mainstream media that speak to some atrocity that the Taliban has committed, especially against women and children. And it's going to be used as a pretext, or tried to be used as a pretext for staying there. They're gonna like some suicide bomber or something. They're gonna find something, and they're gonna blow it up on CNN, on NBC, and all these places as a sort of reflexive way to show like, well, look, the Taliban is still there and they're still very mean and still very dangerous. Don't fall for it. Just don't fall for it. You can almost predicted like clockwork that you're gonna start seeing those stories. Just like we saw those like ridiculous stories last year about Russians paying Taliban fighters to kill American soldiers, as if like the Taliban, didn't have enough reason to kill American soldiers. Yeah, you're gonna see the mainstream media lockstep with the national security state as they resist this attempt to withdraw from Afghanistan, because there are so many interests at play that it's just inconceivable for a huge sector of the American imperial machine to pull out. It's just not what they do. They find justification to stay places forever. And so don't fall for it.
Well, your prediction has already come true. We're going to see an escalation of this, but already the New York Times shared a new intelligence report that offered a grim assessment of Afghanistan and the prospects for peace. The Afghan government will struggle to hold the Taliban at bay if the coalition withdraws support. So it's already begun. Usually starts off with the intelligence community anonymously talking to reporters, giving them the impression that they're getting some sort of hot scoop, and they just regurgitate what the intelligence community has to say to garner support among the American people to either remain in a conflict or to start a new conflict. And then one final thing I do want to mention, because this is what I think people should be focusing on or paying attention to, at least in regard to messaging in the media. Biden's been pretty clear. He wants to focus US foreign policy on China. And so he didn't even really hide that in announcing this troop withdrawal. So there is an effort to kind of move away from the damage that we've done in the Middle East and focus primarily on China, because the fact of the matter is China is beating us economically with the help of Joe Biden, by the way. I mean, the trade deals that Joe Biden was gung-ho for did lead to jobs, millions of jobs being shipped out of this country into places like China in order to exploit cheap labor. And then once they start beating us, there's like calls for a Cold War because we just cannot have China be the hegemon, right? Like that's what's happening right now. And that pivot to Asia really began under the Obama administration. So there's a very real reason why there was certainly no difference between Trump and Biden in their campaign messaging on China. And unfortunately, I think we're gonna see a lot more of that moving forward. Any final thoughts before we go to break, Nando?
No, good riddance to this war. Noam Chomsky was right shortly after 9/11 when he said that the US was not justified in going in Afghanistan. This sort of cool liberal position at the time was like, the Afghanistan war is justified, whereas the Iraq war is unjustified. That was kind of like the Barack Obama line in 2008. No, the Noam Chomsky line that the Afghanistan war was a crime from the beginning was correct. That the United States was going to do far more damage in Afghanistan than was ever perpetrated on 9/11. So, kudos to Chomsky for being right again.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.